Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Hendershot. Thank you so much for taking this opportunity to come and meet with me at this parent-teacher conference. I am very excited to be talking about Crew because he is a wonderful student. I love having him in our class. He is so very kind to everyone around him, and especially around recess time, he's very good about inviting others to come play with him. He works quietly and he doesn't distract other people, and I think one of his greatest strengths is that he's good at asking others for help. So throughout this last quarter, I administered a couple of tests to assess his reading and writing. And I gave these assessments because I was looking to see where he was doing well in his reading and writing and where he can improve. My goal for Crow was to be able to move him up a couple more levels, 2 more levels to be exact, in his reading before the school year ends in a couple months. So these tests really gave me a good look at where he's at and what I need to do to help him improve. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about these tests, what they are, and how I use them to interpret the data. So the first test I gave him was a questionnaire, and it's called the Burke Reading Interview. So this interview just helped me understand how he felt about himself as a reader and what he thought it meant to be a good reader. So it's just basic questions about where you viewed yourself and what good readers, like what qualities they have. So the next assessments that I administered were for running records. So these assessments are administered when Crew is reading a book out loud. And during this time, I can quickly mark off things that he's doing well, and I can recognize the places where he's struggling. They also help me to know his independent, instructional, or frustration level. So if he's at independent, then I move him up. If he's at instructional, then I keep him where he's at. And if he's at frustration, then that shows me that he needs to be moved back down 1 level. And then after administering these couple of running records, I also did a quick comprehension assessment to see that he was understanding what he was reading. And so I would basically ask him questions like, what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, what happened in the end, how do you know that? And I would check to see how his comprehension was. Finally, I took a couple of his assessments to make a couple of his writing pieces, to do a couple of assessments and just to check for print awareness, spelling strategies, and the quality of his sentences. And then I gave him a primary spelling inventory assessment, which is just a small spelling test to check and see what stage of spelling he is at. So there's already predetermined words that I read to him. So, while I was administering these assessments, I, of course, noticed a lot of strengths that Crew has. So, first, he feels really confident in his reading abilities, and I think that is really great for him to have that kind of confidence instilled in him. When I asked him one of the questions from the Burke Reading Interview, he answered very positively how he viewed himself as a reader. So, the question asked, on a scale of 1 to 5, how good of a reader are you? And he gave himself a 9 out of 5. So I think that is really great. He thinks really, really well of himself. And then a second strength that I found was that he had the ability to recognize and write beginning and ending consonant sounds. So when I gave him that spelling test, that we call it the PSI, he got every single beginning consonant sound correct and every single ending consonant sound correct. So he received a 7 out of 7 on both the beginning and ending consonant sounds. So it's great that he has that awareness of the beginning and ending. And then a final strength that I noticed in him is he has really good print recognition. So from both of his reading samples that I looked at, I could see that he got a 5 out of 6 on directional principles. This just means that he recognizes that you start at the top left and you move right, and then once you reach the end of your sentence, you go down to the next one. He also recognizes that there should be a finger space between different words. So he has really, really good print awareness. So I think that there are a few things that you and I can both do to help him continue to strengthen these strengths of his. For example, at home, I would like to encourage you to use environmental print to help him continue to have confidence. So things like signs that you see or cereal boxes and newspapers and any other kind of prints around the house, if you can help him practice to keep reading those, I think that will give him a lot of confidence in what he's reading. He will be able to see the signs around him and continue to read. So I also will be able to bring in some signs around signs from our community and bring in newspapers to be able to strengthen that home and school connection. And to help Crew continue to strengthen his consonant sounds, at school we have a program called Phonics Blast. And we are able to manipulate phonics sounds. For example, if I were to take the word blast and then say, what word would it be if you took off that first B? And then it would be last. So I think if we kind of play around with those phonics, that would help him to be able to manipulate those sounds a little bit more. So I think at home it would be beneficial if you just continue to read out loud to him so that he can see the consonants and see and hear you reading them out loud. It will give him a lot of help to be able to see that demonstrated for him. And to keep his print awareness going strong, I think that it would be good if he saw you writing. So if you ever have to write down any kind of memos, like make sure that he sees you so he can see that you are starting in the top right and then, or top left and moving right and then going back down and putting spaces between those words. Once again, he'll be seeing your example and copying you. So, and at school, I will continue to use those big books that I have for shared reading so that I can help with this print awareness. So I think that his strengths are really strong, and that if you and I, we keep working on that, they can continue to stay strong and continue to be that good base for his reading and writing instruction. So when I was doing these assessments, I also found a couple of areas that he could use some improvement on. So the first area is that although he has print awareness, his writing is difficult to read. I think that sometimes it's because he writes really quickly. He wants to get it done, but sometimes this makes his writing really, really difficult to read. And so while I was looking through his writing samples, I had to rate him 1 out of 6 for his language level and 1 out of 6 for his message quality. And often when I read these and I ask him to read them to me, he will read it to me one way and then the next way he'll change the sentence slightly. So I think that sometimes he's getting a little confused as well with his messy writing. And so a second improvement that I saw that could be made was that he guesses a lot of words when he's reading. And he uses the pictures to guess the words, which I think is a really, really great comprehension strategy to look at the pictures. But sometimes the words are really off. For example, in one of his running records, he read the sentence read, "The deer ran fast," but he read, "The deer ran after." And I think it's because he was looking at the picture and he saw the deer running after something. And so I think this is a great comprehension skill, but he should start practicing reading the words and sounding out the words and then going to the picture to see if that word would be correct. So I have a couple of suggestions that you can do at home and things that I can continue to do here at school. So to improve his writing at home, I think you could encourage him to write his name and to encourage him to write lists of words that he does know. So this way you could practice with him writing those good big strokes and taking the time to really write it legibly and neatly. And so I think that if you're guiding him and you're helping him, that will really strengthen that foundation. And at school, we also teach handwriting skills, and we have a big book that we use to practice the letters and practice words every day. So I will continue doing this and continue monitoring him, that he's not speeding through his work and that he's taking the time to fill up the lines that are on the page. And to improve his reading, I think it's really important that you continue to read aloud to him. I noticed that sometimes he would get lost if he wasn't pointing with his finger. So if you're reading out loud and pointing with your finger to each individual word or along the sentence, that will really help him to be able to see how each word and each letter has a specific sound. And I think that will really help him and strengthen that foundation. And I think that while I'm at school, I will continue to do these running records as well as posting words onto the walls. And I'll start posting them on the wall that's closest to him so he'll have easier access to these words when he's struggling. That way he can start practicing some of those sight words and also getting those letter name sounds down. So I think that if we are working on those things together, Crew can really improve a lot by the end of the year. So overall, it has been so wonderful working with Crew, and I'm so excited that I have him for a couple more months. And he's improved a lot since the beginning of the year, and he's continuing to improve. And he's made a great addition to our first grade classroom. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go. And do you have any questions for me? If not, then thank you for coming today, and I'm so excited to continue working with Crew.